G'day and welcome back to my channel. Now, as promised, this is part 2 of the Schnellboot comparison, where I'll look at these three kits and see how things have improved from the 1970s through the 2000s to 2020, right all the way through 50 years of styrene production. Have they got any better? Well, I reviewed this kit not long ago, which was the start, part 1. It was mainly just a review of this, but I was looking in comparison to the other two as I went. So that's worth going back and looking at, okay, the E-Boot. Long time ago, last year even, I reviewed the S-100, but not this one with the Flak 38 on. It was the standard S-100, well, it was the S-100 with the 3.8mm single cannon at the rear, and I've already built that. So you can watch that entire series and see how that kit came up. Fairly similar, and for the sake of this comparison, we'll just use this kit and I'll talk about the difference with the quad gun. Now, the newest kit in our trio is from Fore Hobbies. Now, that's Chinese, okay? So we've really got three countries here. We've got British, German, and Chinese. Completely different approaches, completely different ways of manufacturing, different plastic, and they've done things differently. And we'll go into that in detail in this video. So this kit sits in between these two in terms of history. This is an S7, even though Airfix calls it an E-Boot, it's still an S-Boot. E-Boot's just the name that the British call them, enemy boat, right? Germans call them Schnellboot, fast boat, okay? Or boot. Now, this was the first production type, slightly shorter. Then they went to the S-38. Well, there's a few iterations in between. The S-38 was the next one that was basically a lot of, and it's quite well known. And then after that, they improved it even further and came up with the S-100, which is distinctive by its armoured bridge area, which makes it look very different. So we have three different kits. Now, in previous videos, I did dry fits. So there's a dry fit already of the Airfix kit. There's a dry fit already of the Revell kit. Okay. And we have the S-38 from Fore. So we have three Schnellboots here, and we can have a look at them and see what's different and, you know, basically which one I think is the best. So would you like to see that? Bless your sword, just there for scale. Yeah. If you want to see that, hang in there. Here it comes. Roll the music. If you're enjoying what you're seeing on this channel, then please like this video, comment, subscribe, or if you really want to help me out, you can go and become a YouTube member. That really helps things along. Or pop along to my Patreon page, and for as little as the price of a coffee a month, really, you too can support this channel, and it really helps me to purchase the kits and put out all these sort of videos doing these complex comparisons. All right, on with the video. Now, the first thing you'll notice with the three mock-ups is the amount of rubber bands required. The Airfix kit, yeah, that required 4 rubber bands and taping at the stern and taping at the bow. The Airfix kit is unusual in these three because the transom is one piece at the stern here. So it has 2 sides, only 1 deck because there's no raised area, but you've got also a waterline option here. The lower part of the hull comes away. So we break it down and say it does require 4 rubber bands because being one of the oldest kits here, it's a bit more fiddly in the fit. The deck pieces are loose or separate. They come off. Right? So you've got hollowed out deck. But it really does need all these rubber bands or the whole thing just falls to pieces. So you could say it's the least fitting of all of them, but honestly it still does fit together. It's just that it does require a lot of rubber banding. A lot of people complain here at the bow this doesn't quite sort of join up, and I can see that I'm going to do a little bit of sanding here. It looks like there's just a bit of excess sprue in there that needs cleaning out, but this does go together. It's sort of all come loose now. So you take the rubber bands off, there's no way this will hold its shape. Of all the three, it's the one that really is going to require quite a bit of gluing to keep it together. But it does go together, and the moulding itself is quite nice. The quality is there. It's nice and crisp, no problem at all. But I'd expect that that mine is an original 75 moulding. Now I have seen later mouldings of this kit. In fact, I even had one that was a red box, which I think is a 2000 issue. And I was quite disappointed. It really was quite flashy and horrible, and typical of Airfix when they have reboxed and re-shoved out a kit, you know, basically that's, you know, many decades old. The moulds are getting worn. That's what happens. It's just part of the natural way of things. Moulds wear out, change of the plastic, you know, from this plastic, which was very hard and it moulds nice and crisp. You put the more modern Airfix plastic, which is a lot softer, in an old mould, and you just get flash everywhere. It's just not designed for it. So these are the things. If you're going to get one of these Airfix S7s, E-Boots, look for the oldest kit you can. Try and get, like I've got, the white box from 1975. The Airfix kit's deck has a lot of gribbles on. They've even moulded in the rope, which I absolutely hate. I would be scraping that off and putting real cordage on there. I mean, you know, that's just really annoying. But it was kind of what they did back then. It is nicely detailed. There's good rivets there, and everything's nice, as I said, nice and crisp. So, you know, it is nicely moulded. There's no complaints there. But you've got a hell of a lot of stuff on here. It's probably the one with the most amount of things on the deck that you're either going to have to cut off if you don't like them, or you're just going to have to paint around, which is just, you know, a bit of a pest. Luckily, the decks on these and a lot of the fittings are all the same colour. So that sort of solves half the problem. Moving to the hull with the least amount of rubber bands, in fact, one. That's it. This Revell kit it's kind of dumb in its engineering. It's very basic, but it does the job and it fits together beautifully. I've only got a bit of tape here on the bow. That's it. And the only reason I got a little bit of tape there is just to stop that part coming out, because it does slide out nicely. It only takes a little bit of pressure with my hand to hold this whole thing together, and it fits really well. And the bridge just goes straight over the top of that, and as you've seen if you've watched my entire build series for the S-100, this kit does fit together very well, very nicely. There was no warpage at all in the hull sights, so that was fine. The only big bugbear is the fact that the transom is in two, but it does fit together very nicely. In fact, I just glued it up, gave it a light sand, and that was it. That's all I needed. I didn't put any putty on it at all when I built the other one. So I'd expect it to be pretty well the same with this version. It's essentially the same kit. The only difference is there's a quad gun at the stern here. That's it. Everything else appears to be basically identical. The one thing is this kit is getting a bit older in the tooth. This is about 6 or 7 years later on from the one that I've built, which was around the 2000. So there's a little bit of flash on some parts, and you're starting to get a slight bit of softness here and there. But still, this is a very buildable kit, and it's one of the cheapest ones here, and you'll get a fantastic result from it. So no problem there at all. Now the deck is devoid of not too much. I mean, there's still quite a bit of mucking around here on the bow, but if you've seen the video for painting the red stripes, it was fairly easy to work around the greebles. I didn't have to cut anything off, and I managed to paint up all this and get all the effects in. No worries, no issue at all. So yeah, there's a few things on the deck. It's not too bad. Certainly no coiled up rope that you've got to cut off like the Airfix. As I've shown in the full review on this kit, the main part of the deck, nicely moulded, all the wood effects are nice. It's not too bad. You do have to mask a few things to get everything the colour that you want, but it's not that difficult. Depending on which version. Some of the versions, this is just all dark grey. Everything's dark grey. They even paint over the wood and it's all dark grey. So you can literally just, all dark grey, you're done. Not a problem at all. So that kit's not too bad. Let's have a look at the S-38, which is the newest one. The Fore kit needed 3 rubber bands to hold it together, so it doesn't quite, well, it's not as dumb as the Revell. Like the Revell kit's just dumb and it clicks together, no problems at all, just holds together. The Fore kit requires a little more cajaggling, and in my review video I didn't notice there's actually internal beams, and I'll show you those. Keep this whole thing together, it has, and hopefully it won't just all totally collapse. Take the deck out. There are these little braces, these little posts, all right, and they do help give it some strength and shape. But I tell you, fitting them in without gluing, because this is just dry fit, it was a little tricky, because the slightest relaxation, and yep, they'll all pop out. But that is a nice touch, and I didn't notice that when I did the full review. So, you know. But it does go together fairly well, and as I remarked when I reviewed this kit, there's the tiniest tabs in the universe on the side of the inside of the hull here, so you know you really got very little ways to sort of locate it. Thank goodness for these little tubes here that actually click together and hold that hull. I didn't notice that when I was doing the review. So apart from that, as I'd shown in the review, this one is very nicely modded. The only one that's open for the torpedoes, right? So your torpedo tube, which goes in there, right? Because this is a whole raised section. Let me put it up this way to make sense. This is a whole raised section here above the main deck. Because in your S7, the Airfix one, the deck just runs completely along here. And that's why it has that little scallop out, which is, you know, a little bit tricky to sort of fit. So it's a nice touch that these are open. They're not on the Revell kit. Okay, on the Revell kit, this is all just molded shut, so that you have to cut big holes in there, as I did, and scratch that whole thing if you want your torpedo doors open, so that you can have a torpedo protruding out or whatever you want to do. But it is lovely. It's the only one with internal detail, so not that there's much of it, but there's only that. It has the same as the Revell kit. It basically has the two halves that come together for the transom, and you'll just have to sand that. Shouldn't be any putty needed. In fact, this has a little bit of warpage, but with those braces in, those two tubes, I'd say once you glue it all up and rubber band it, you shouldn't need any putty at all. This whole thing should just glue together beautifully, and away you go. Detail wise for the deck, well, there's a lot of greebles on there. There's a lot of little stuff. But again, it shouldn't be that hard to mask the red stripes if that's what you want to do. It's only on the Revell and the Fore kit where the possibility of some red stripes would exist, where they've got the friendly fire. The Airfix model, the S7, it had a big swastika on top of the roof of the cabin. So that's how they identified themselves. So there you go. So yeah, there's a bit of greebling, but you know, you can work around it. The main deck is fairly clean. Everything gets mounted to it, so you can pretty well get away with painting this whatever deck colour you're using, whether you're going the pea green or you're going to go into the dark greys. You're away. You can even go a white version. There's one that's fully white, but that's another story. So all the hatches and all the business all go on separately, including a little bit of a rear piece of superstructure here. So that makes it fairly easy to paint. So any of your greebles or any of your bits and pieces you can add, like hatches and what have you, they go on separately. You'll be able to detail paint them sort of off the model. So that makes that fairly easy. It's one of the thinnest of the decks. It's got a lot of bendiness. It's one of the thinnest of the decks, and therefore that's why you've really got to get that hull very secure before you put the deck in, because there's very little in sort of structural rigidity from the deck, and that's why they have those little tubes, which I didn't know about when I did my full review. They really make a difference. Now in the Airfix kit, your cabin is made up of quite a lot of pieces, and they all miter together with, you know, sort of nearly 45-degree angle joins, which is, it's a bit of a bother. It's a bit tricky to put together, and it'll only really make sense once you fit it to the deck, and then the deck shape will actually get the whole thing to sort of make some sense. But I really don't like these 45-degree cuts, you see. They're miters. They're a bugger, because whenever I try and clean them up, I invariably slip and dig a big hole, as I did there. I dig a bit of a hole in, so I end up filling them anyway, so they don't really serve. Nothing better than just a nice square flat joint, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. So they're doable. They're just it's just a bugbear of mine. I hate the angled join. I really do. It annoys me. But the detail is quite good, and that'll go together rather nicely. One good thing about Airfix parts from this era is they would put the part number hidden underneath somewhere, which is handy because things generally came loose in the box, which is sort of typical bugbear of Airfix, or you'd cut them all off to paint them and then go, oh no, hang on, what's what? So at least you know that part number is that part, and that fits nice and neatly on there. Which a big problem here is all your windows are clear plastic. So they've got to go in, and you sort of couldn't really put them in after you've put the top on. In fact, even once the sides are on, well, you might get them in. Airfix actually wants you to make those up before you even start assembling all that. So there's a lot of chicken and egg stuff where you're going to have to think, what do I paint first, and then what do I do? And, you know, and especially if you're worried about these miters, and in my case, I'll need to basically put a bit of putty in to get the best result out of them. I'd probably be trying to build this up and then putty up and paint the whole thing, and then try and squeeze all those clear parts inside there, and then finally pop the lid on it. But it all fits nicely, and it's all going to look quite good when it's finished. As per my review when I did the whole Airfix kit, the parts are very cleanly moulded, very crisp. But this is one of the very first runs with the moulding and with the early Airfix plastic, so you'd expect it to be quite good. In fact, a lot of people responded and commented on that video, said to me this was their best kit, this was their kit, the pride of their accomplishment at that period, and it was their flagship kit, if you like. That's the word I'm looking for. So yeah, you know, Airfix would brag about this kit. It was the best one they'd put out. They really pulled out all the stops. Now the main gun, which is 20 centimeter here, it's a bit ordinary. The molding is very basic. Now there is no upgrade kit per se that I know of for this Airfix kit. There's nothing. But what you can get is there are certain upgrades from various manufacturers for generic 20 centimeter German guns. All right. So for this MG, you will find there are manufacturers that will at least make the barrel. I mean, Aber will make the barrel as well as Master Barrels. You'll be able to pick up the 20 centimeter flak barrel. As far as the basic of the body, the breech, and all the rest of it, the handling, and well, you can get one of those Griffin kits. It's got a lot more in it, but it would give you at least a bit more of an update. Or you can have a look at some pictures online and then scratch all the additional stuff that's kind of missing, because it is very basic. The assembly of the bridge for the Revell kit is a lot simpler than the Airfix kit, and it goes together rather well. I've already done it for the S-100 that I've already built. The parts are nice. There's not a lot of detail in them, but they fit together very well. It's very logical. I mean, it's very German in that it's, you know, click, click, click. It all makes sense. It's very easy to paint it up and then put your detail in later. So that is not a problem. The armoured bridge is done very nicely, and the detail on it is quite good, although I enhanced mine with photo etch. Now, this kit, which is the later version, they've included these little styrofoam stoppers here to protect these little protuberances. I don't know what they are. They could be aerials, they could be something. Who knows what they are? I've never really figured out what they are. But it's nice to see that a bit of extra care was taken. And I must say that the sprues were all nicely wrapped in individual bags, and it was tightly put in the box. That was great. There's only one part that I found that came loose. Far cry from the S-100, the first one I got, which came from Kentucky in a smashed up box. Yeah, that's another story. Look, if you want to know more about individual parts, please have a look at that review that I did for the other S-100. I go into far more detail about individual parts and, you know, individual stuff. I'm just basically doing a comparison, like for like. So the thing we really like to look at is the guns on this. And interestingly, you do get the 3.8mm, but you're not going to use it. That's the one that basically I put on the stern of my S-100, still in the plastic bag. Although mine is pretty well mostly photo etch, but that you need to watch the video to have a look at that. As I noticed when I reviewed the other Schnellboot, the S-100 from Revell, the front deck gun, the bow deck gun, is very nicely moulded. You can pretty well build it out of the box with the parts here. They're quite good. I mean, I'd go a metal barrel, at least change that. I'm lucky enough that when I bought this, it did come with the Edward upgrade. So I've got a few little things that will enhance and spruce it up. Nowhere near as complicated as the Griffin upgrade, which you'll see there's a whole video on upgrading the guns, and it's quite complex and it's quite involved, but you can do it. The midships twin 2cm gun is here, and the parts, again, they're fairly good. I used most of them when I did my upgrade with the Griffin kit. In fact, the Griffin kit only really gives you the metal barrels and a few little sights and things, and you know, they use most of the parts out of the Revell kit because actually it's quite good, nicely moulded, comes up well. Now the barrels are all on the new sprues for this. Revell has repositioned and replaced a lot of parts, so a lot of the old parts and new parts are on this same sprue. You can tell sort of some of the newer parts, they're kind of cleaner, at least some they've cleaned up. That's the 20mm, 2cm barrel, and you'll get 2 of these sprues, so you get 2 of those. And it's quite good in itself as it is, and really the only thing I do is probably put the metal barrel on it and change that gun shield, because a photo etch gun shield is always going to look so much better, be nice and thin, and it just looks better. So they're quite good. Now you'll also get all the parts on here for the rear gun, and that is the quad. So they're quad 20cm again. So you have got the double barrels. They're all set up and molded together, spaced, ready to go. You have on here the wings, so that's basically your protection, and you'll find the mechanism. This is basically so that they can rotate, albeit in a little pair. You get 2 of those, of course, because you've got 2 sets of guns. So yeah, you've got 2 sprues, 2 sets of everything. They'll make up that quad, so that's quite nice. Now for that, you can just buy the barrels. You can buy basically flak 2cm barrels, and you can get them in Fores, because they use this same kind of gun on top of tanks and all kinds of things. And I've even got a really nicely modded 3D kit of the quad gun that I may use instead, but I don't know, that'll be in another video. I'll compare the two, see how they go. But the Revell kit's parts are good enough out of the box. You can really put it out of the box. However, the remoulding and rejigging to create this version, because I said they move things around, create different sprues, you're getting quite a bit of flash popping up sort of all over the place, because basically, yeah, you're using old molds and new molds, and they're you're getting various degrees of quality. So nothing that you can't cut around, nothing that you can't clean up. You just need to be aware there's going to be a little bit of work to do here. Certainly not as flash free as the Airfix kit, and that's unusual, isn't it? Now the Fore kit has none of the problems with the Airfix kit of having to get miters together and everything, because essentially the bridge is very similar. But their solution is it's one slide molded part, and it is very, very nicely molded with lots of detail. So that makes that a lot more interesting and a lot easier to put on there, although as a modeler you're not really getting to sort of join as many parts, but quite frankly it'll look great. You still are putting in all the clear windows, you're putting in doors and greebles and all kinds of things, so there's still quite a lot to add to this, but my way of thinking, I'll do without the mitered joins, thank you. They're a pain in the butt. So that is very nice. Now, you continue on with this kit in that, as I said, on the deck, you're adding all the little pieces. There's so many little pieces to add. You're adding on the basically the doors and all the mechanism for the torpedo tubes. And that's all there, so you can have open, closed, everything. You've even got the tube for the torpedo tubes. There it is, that goes into that opening. So you've got a lot more options in this kit, a lot more options. Revell kit 2, there's a lot of stuff that you add, but this Fore kit is just amazing. There's so many more parts. It's got to have about 3 if not 4 times the number of parts of the Revell kit, and certainly double the parts of the Airfix kit, because the Airfix kit is actually a little more complex than the Revell kit. All your armament is on one sprue in this kit, which is rather nice. So, you know, beautifully molded. You will not need to put aftermarket. And the thing is, they've given you the option of metal barrel. Even if you go with the plastic barrel with this one, it is hollowed out. It is slide molded, and it is hollowed out. So that is lovely. So everything in this kit is beautiful. I mean, I'm pretty gushed about it when I basically had a look at it in the first review, but you know, it is so nicely done. So you can build the guns out of the kit, out of the box, because you get metal shields. They're there as an option. You get, they're in there somewhere, metal barrels. They're there as an option. So you have all of that. So it's very nice. Now, one thing that's different on all 3 kits are railings. Now, the Fore kit gives you the stanchions as separate parts, which is very nice. And they are very beautifully molded, and they are hollowed out, although they do recommend that you drill them with a 0.3mm drill. But they look pretty good. But just in case there's a little bit of flash, they're covering their bottoms there and saying drill them out. But their idea is that you mount your stanchions and then you run wire through it. And if you watch my the S-100 kit build, I gave up with the Revell parts. I thought they were too thick. The Revell railings, they're too thick and clunky. And my friend Craig, Mr. Mouse Muffins, he actually 3D printed me some stanchions, and I did the same sort of trick of running a wire through these individual stanchions to produce a result. Now Airfix does it both ways. Some of the kit is fully moulded plastic railing, and it's not bad. It's not badly done at all. It's quite thin actually. It's quite surprising. And then other parts of it, they give you the stanchions, and they give you string, so they put it through, although you'd use wire. So 3 different approaches. All of them can come up good. I mean, even the Revell kit with their slightly thick railings, that particular model can have tissue paper over it to simulate canvas, because often the whole side of the deck where the railings were was covered by canvas, and they painted the camo over it. So you can do that. I've seen that very successfully done. That works well. It looks great when you do that. It solves the problem of the railings being a bit clunky. But the Fore kit is probably the best. You get them already individual stanchions, hollowed out, you get the wire, you get the photo etch, you get everything. I mean, this is a kit you wouldn't buy anything more for. The barrels are there, everything. So if you want a kit that's full on, a Schnellboot, and you don't want to have to go searching around for all the individual parts and everything, grab the Fore kit. It's terrific, but you're going to pay twice as much. So, English Airfix, Revell German, or Chinese Fore. They're all good kits. They all have their strengths and their weaknesses. I'd say the Revell kit's going to be the easiest one to build. You build it straight out of the box. It looks great. It looks fine. It's devoid of some detail. It's kind of simplistic in some of its parts, but you can paint it up and it'll look fine. Add a little bit of aftermarket, it looks really good. Add a lot of aftermarket like mine and go crazy with maybe a snazzy sort of camo scheme, and you've got something that really pounds it out of the park. The Airfix kit? Well, considering it's 50 years old, it's pretty bloody good, really. And it's got more detail, I'd say, than the Revell kit, in my opinion. It certainly seems to be a lot more going on. You'll need a little bit of fettling. It's an Airfix kit. You're going to need a little bit of messing around and a bit of fiddling. But the parts are beautifully moulded. There's virtually no flash in the kit. From all the tests I've done, it seems to fit together very well. It certainly was one of their better kits back then. And if you can get an original white box like I have, so you know you're buying the original moulding, then you shouldn't have any problems at all. Aftermarket, well, you're only going to probably need a few gun barrels. That's all I'm going to do with mine, is I'm adding a few metal gun barrels to it. So there's a little MG43, I think it is, or a 34 on the bow. I've got a barrel for that, and the 2cm in the, on the rear deck. That's it. Apart from that, all out of the box. Even the railings in this are fine. Although I'll compare them with my 3D printed stanchions. I don't think I need them. 3D printed stanchions do make the Revell kit so much better, but it depends if you want to spend that money. It's not much. It's about a third of the price of the kit again, because this is a cheap kit. Maybe you can pick this kit up. Well, you used to be able to pick it up for about 4 shekels. I think the prices have gone up lately, surprisingly. But the whole world's changing and there's strange things going on. Keep an eye out. Second hand, you never know. You'd be able to pick up one of these, 50 Australian dollars, 35 US. Not much. Now, this Fore kit, well, it is the best in that it is beautifully moulded, heaps of options, the aftermarket's all included, it's going to fit together like a dream, but it is overly complex. That doesn't worry me so much. I'll really enjoy building it when I get around to it. But having said that, I built the Revell first because it was easy. This is a choice for my second build, which I'll be building in April, because it'll be easy and I love Airfix. I'm going to leave it a while before I tackle the Fore, because that's a full-on build. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of fiddly parts. I'm sure it all will go together, but you're going to have to do a lot of thinking of painting and organising, and there's so many sub-assemblies and things you have to do. It's a difficult build. But there you go. You can't go wrong with any of these. All right, that's it. That's my comparison of these 3 Schnellboots in 1/72. Until somebody else brings out another one, that is it. All right, goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.